Alice was beginning to get very tired of sitting by her sister on the bank and of have nothing to do. Once or twice she had peeped into the book her sister was reading, but it had no pictures or conversations in it. And what is the use of a book, thought Alice, without pictures or conversation? So she was considering in her own mind, as well as she could, for the hot day made her feel very sleepy and stupid, whether the pleasure of making a daisy chain would be worth the trouble of getting up and picking the daisies. When suddenly a white rabbit with pink eyes ran close by her. There was nothing so very remarkable in that, nor did Alice think it so very much out of the way to hear the rabbit say to itself, "Oh dear, I shall be late. I need to get to my drum set." When she thought about it afterwards, it occurred to her that she ought to have wondered at this, but at the time it all seemed quite natural. But when the rabbit actually took a watch out of its waistcoat pocket and looked at it, and then hurried on to his drum kit, Alice started to her feet, for it flashed across her mind that she had never before seen a rabbit with either a waistcoat pocket or a watch or a drum kit. And burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it, and fortunately was just in time to see it pop down a large rabbit hole under the hedge where he kept his drum kit. And this is where the story begins.
Alice. All in the golden afternoon, full leisurely we glide, for both our oars with little skill by little arms are plied, while little hands make vain pretence our wanderings to guide. Ah, cruel three, in such an hour beneath such dreamy weather, to beg a tale of breath too weak to stir the tiniest feather. Yet what can one poor voice avail against 3 tongues together? Imperious Prima flashes forth her edict to begin it. In gentler tone, Secunda hopes there will be nonsense in it, while Tertia interrupts the tale not more than once a minute. Anon, to sudden silence won, in fancy they pursue the dream child moving through a land of wonders wild and new, in friendly chat with bird or beast, and half believe it true. And ever as the story drained the wells of fancy dry, and faintly strove that weary one to put the subject by, the rest next time, it is next time, the happy voices cry. Thus grew the tale of Wonderland. Thus slowly, one by one, its quaint events were hammered out, and now the tale is done, and home we steer, a merry crew, beneath the setting sun. Alice, a childish story take, and with a gentle hand lay it where childhood's dreams are twined in memory's mystic band, like pilgrims' withered wreath of flowers plucked in a far-off land.
Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. A young girl named Alice sits bored by a riverbank where she suddenly spots a white rabbit with a pocket watch and waistcoat, lamenting that he is late. The surprised Alice follows him down a rabbit hole, which sends her down a lengthy plummet but to a safe landing. Inside a room with a table she finds a key to a tiny door, beyond which is a beautiful garden. As she ponders how to fit through the door, she discovers a bottle reading, "Drink me." Alice hesitantly drinks a portion of the bottle's contents, and to her astonishment she shrinks small enough to enter the door. However, she had left the key upon the table and is unable to reach it. Alice then discovers and eats a cake, which causes her to grow to a tremendous size. As the unhappy Alice bursts into tears, the passing White Rabbit flees in a panic, dropping a fan and pair of gloves. Alice uses the fan for herself, which causes her to shrink once more and leaves her swimming in a pool of her own tears. Within the pool, Alice meets a variety of animals and birds who convene on a bank and engage in a caucus race to dry themselves. Following the end of the race, Alice inadvertently frightens the animals away by discussing her cat. White Rabbit appears in search of the gloves and fan. Mistaking Alice for his maidservant, the White Rabbit orders Alice to go into his house and retrieve them. Alice finds another bottle and drinks from it, which causes her to grow to such an extent that she gets stuck within the house. The White Rabbit and his neighbours attempt several methods to extract her, eventually taking to hurling pebbles that turn into small cakes. Alice eats one and shrinks herself, allowing her to flee into the forest, where the bears shit in. She meets a caterpillar seated on a mushroom and smoking a hookah. Amidst the caterpillar's questioning, Alice begins to admit to her current identity crisis, compounded by her inability to remember a poem. Before crawling away, the caterpillar tells her that a bite of one side of the mushroom will make her larger, while a bite from the other side will make her smaller. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. Against Idleness and Mischief by Isaac Watts. How doth the little busy bee improve each shining hour, and gather honey all the day from every opening flower? How skillfully she builds her cell, how neat she spreads the wax, and labours hard to store it well with the sweet food she makes. In works of labour or of skill I would be busy too, for Satan finds some mischief still for idle hands to do. In books or work or healthful play let my first years be passed, that I may give for every day some good account at last. During a period of trial and error, Alice's neck extends between the treetops, frightening a pigeon who mistakes her for a serpent. After shrinking to an appropriate height, Alice arrives at the home of a duchess who owns a perpetually grinning Cheshire cat. But back to the caterpillar. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last the caterpillar took the hooker out of its mouth and addressed her in a languid, sleepy voice. "Who are you?" "I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then." "I don't see," said the caterpillar. Alice said, "I have trouble remembering things. I can't remember things as I used to, and I don't keep the same size for 10 minutes together." "Can't remember what things?" said the caterpillar. "Well, I've tried to say, 'How doth the little busy bee,' but it all came out different." The caterpillar said, "Repeat. You are old, Father William." Alice folded her hands and began.
"You are old, Father William," the young man said, "and your hair has become very white, and yet you incessantly stand on your head. Do you think at your age it is right?" "In my youth," Father William replied to his son, "I feared it might injure the brain, but now that I'm perfectly sure I have none, why, I do it again and again." "You are old," said the youth, "as I mentioned before, and you have grown most uncommonly fat. Yet you turned a back somersault in at the door. Pray, what is the reason of that?" "In my youth," said the sage, as he shook his grey locks, "I kept all my limbs very supple by the use of this ointment. 1 shilling a box. Allow me to sell you a couple?" "You are old," said the youth, "and your jaws are too weak for anything tougher than suet. Yet you finished the goose with the bones and the beak. Pray, how did you manage to do it?" "In my youth," said his father, "I took to the law and argued each case with my wife, and the muscular strength which it gave to my jaw has lasted the rest of my life." "You are old," said the youth. "One would hardly suppose that your eye was as steady as ever. Yet you balanced an eel on the end of your nose. What made you so awfully clever?" "I have answered 3 questions, and that is enough," said his father. "Don't give yourself airs. Do you think I can listen all day to such stuff? Be off, or I'll kick you downstairs."
The Duchess's baby, whom she hands to Alice, transforms into a piglet, which Alice releases into the woods, where the bear shit in. The Cheshire cat appears to Alice and directs her toward the Hatter and March Hare before disappearing, leaving his grin behind. Alice finds the Hatter, March Hare and Sleepy Dormouse in the midst of an absurd tea party. The Hatter explains that it is always 6 p.m, tea time, claiming that time is standing still as punishment for the Hatter trying to kill it. A strange conversation ensues around the table, and the riddle, "Why is a raven like a writing desk?" is brought forward. Eventually, Alice impatiently decides to leave, dismissing the affair as the stupidest tea party that she has ever been to. Noticing a door on one of the trees, Alice passes through and finds herself back in the room from the beginning of her journey. She is able to take the key and use it to open the door to the garden, which turns out to be a croquet court of the Queen of Hearts, whose guard consists of living playing cards. Alice participates in a croquet game in which hedgehogs are used as balls, flamingos are used as mallets, and soldiers act as gates. The Queen proves to be short-tempered, and she constantly orders beheadings. When the Cheshire Cat appears as only a head, the Queen orders his beheading, only to be told that such an act is impossible. Because the cat belongs to the Duchess, Alice prompts the Queen to release the Duchess from prison to resolve the matter. When the Duchess ruminates on finding morals in everything around her, the Queen dismisses her on the threat of execution. Alice then meets a griffin and a weeping mock turtle who dance to the lobster quadrille while Alice recites, rather incorrectly, "'Tis the voice of the lobster." The mock turtle sings them "Beautiful Soup," during which the griffin drags Alice away for an impending trial in which the Knave of Hearts stands accused of stealing the Queen's tarts. "Will you walk a little faster?" said a whiting to the snail. "There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail." See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not, would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go, his scaly friend replied. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the near is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you? Won't you? Will you? Won't you? will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you join the dance? The trial is ridiculously conducted by the King of Hearts, and the jury is composed of various animals that Alice had previously met. Alice gradually grows in size and confidence, allowing herself increasingly frequent remarks on the irrationality of the proceedings. The Queen finally commands Alice's beheading, but Alice scoffs that the Queen's guard is only a pack of cards. Although Alice holds her own for a time, the card guards soon gang up and start to swarm all over her. Alice's sister wakes her up from a dream, brushing what turns out to be some leaves from Alice's face. Alice leaves her sister on the bank to imagine all the curious happenings for herself. The end.
One pill makes you larger and one pill makes you small, and the ones that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Go ask Alice when she's 10 feet tall. And if you go chasing rabbits and you know you're going to fall, tell him a hookah smoking caterpillar has given you the call, and call Alice when she was just small.